national online licensing, local jobs, global operators.
And to my experienced panel here on the left, I just quickly want to have them introduce themselves before we start off today. Robin, you can start.
Good morning. Is it working? Morning. My name is Robin Bennett. I'm from the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. I'm the HOD for regulatory compliance in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lydia Wanji. I'm a legal counsel, or the fun police, as some people like to say. I work at SumSub, and we are global verification providers, KYC, AML, transaction monitoring, and we help operators who work in the regulated market.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maxwell Lamini from Eswatini Gaming Control Board, where I serve as the Executive Secretary for the board. Thank you.
Thank you, panel. And I think when we start off today, I'm looking forward to your insights. Thank you. I'm looking forward to your insights and some of your learnings, and then we can speak about what we've seen in the industry. I think today what we're going to speak of is the national license, and I would like to hear from you when we refer to national license, whether that means a centralized licensing authority, or provincial, or to the same. Robin, maybe you can address that for me?
Thanks, Cameron. I think when we're talking about the national license, I think we are looking at a centralized national license, but it would have to have provincial execution, just the manner the provincial boards are structured in the country. At the moment we do have the National Gambling Act, and their legislation provisions do provide for national licenses, but the only two types of national licenses we have is for testing labs and for manufacturers. Obviously, if you want to expand that to operators, there would have to be some changes to legislation as such. It would be a bit more changes to the legislation for the National Act. There would have to be some changes to the Provincial Act as well. If we are talking about a pure centralized online national license, I think there may have to be some considerations to constitutional changes, particularly because of the concurrent competence of the province and the national board in terms of the oversight of gambling.
Fair point, good to me. So maybe Maxwell, from your side, I want you to speak about the Eswatini's experience in a national license environment.
In Eswatini, what happens is we have a centralized licensing authority, which is the Gaming Control Board. So it is responsible to issue every kind of licenses that is being applied for. So the board is also responsible for monitoring other activities in the gaming industry, including your responsible gaming and so on.
Right, and then I would like think to better understand, when we talk about these shifts, when it boils down to essentially tax, and how that impacts on the changes. Maybe, Robin, if you can tackle that again on some of the shifts that will happen.
One of the major shifts that will happen, and it will something that will benefit the industry, it will create a bit of more of uniformity between the licensing processes. Now, while you have 9 provincial gambling boards, and they all basically comply with many of the aspects required by the National Gambling Act, there are certain things which is unique to each provincial board as well. So if you're going to have a centralized online licensing, it means that all those boards have to conform to some uniform standards, and that is the main aspect of that and once you start with uniformity regarding licensing, the next step is to get uniformity across with regard to compliance, and that is something that I think will be beneficial both to operators as well as regulators, and it will serve the industry well as a whole.
So that speaks to, Lydia, some of what you can answer to us, what fragmentation means and how do we do KYC.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that with when we know what we're working with, when it's standardized, everyone has this trust. So not only are the operators trusting that the standards are the same through all provinces, the players are trusting that, responsible gaming is done equally, and KYC is done in a way that, the investors also understand that it's working in a white market, a regulated market, and so it works to centralize the model in a good way.
So tell me which areas of compliance you see would tighten up when we go this route.
I think the one that would shift, the first one is AML. Not only because of political reputation, financial control, and scrutiny, but also because it's the easiest one to shift, because models such as the FATF is already in place, so it's easier to just standardize all AML regulations to adapt to that model.
So maybe Robin, from you, do you see that bringing in larger investors? Do you see that certainty that's created? Would you think that's a possibility in that?
Definitely is. At the moment, we are seeing international investors coming into South Africa, but the thing is there is still certain uncertainty. And what international investors want to have, they want to have certainty. They want to enter a market where there are going to be massive changes, which is going to impact their business operations tomorrow. But just in terms of what Lydia indicated about AML changes, if we look at what happened with the FIC, when the FIC was introduced, they initially had made the National Gambling Board as a supervisory body over license holders, which were the accountable institutions. That unfortunately obviously did not work because you had the provincial boards doing also compliance inspections where they had some overlap in terms of the FIC compliance inspection. They then amended the legislation and they made provincial gambling boards the supervisory bodies. Around about, I can't get exact date, probably 2019, 2020, we then had this mutual evaluation where they obviously assessed our processes that we have. And after that evaluation, they then decided to remove many of the supervisory bodies for the designated non-financial businesses and professions. So the FIC then became the supervisory body, with them now actually only signing MOUs with provincial boards like ourselves. So that in itself indicates is that the decentralization of the supervisory in terms of FIC wasn't working, and they needed to do that. And I'm not saying it's because of such changes that they've made that it resulted in the removal from the grey listing, but I do believe it had contributed greatly towards that.
I think part of the discussion that we have to have is the actual practical impact that it has and what it does for job creation. I think I would want to hear from Maxwell, maybe we start with you, on job creation, what that does in Eswatini, for example.
I think to use the centralized system, I think you are able to create job opportunities for the people. For instance, the licensing process becomes easy for everyone to enforce, so that a number of jobs have been created because we are able to license. Licensing it becomes easy for us to ensure that those people who are applying to get the licenses are able to get them on time. And at the same time, we're able to create jobs, especially since the industry is now revolving. We are able to offer people are able to get jobs that the regulator, being the board, is able to assist those people who are applying for licensing, so that even, for instance, now we've recently licensed the casino whereby people have been able to get jobs.
Okay. And maybe Robin, from your side, the weight of compliance, whether that's a positive or negative in the long-term view for job creation.
In terms of compliance?
Yes.
I think it would have a positive outcome. If you're just looking at the way operators are operating in different provinces as it is, if there is uniformity in certain things, I do believe that it will be a positive outcome for the jobs. Obviously, it depends on the nature of the business as well, but it would have more positive offspring than negative.
And when we talk about these changes and we talk about how we view the shift, maybe Lydia, you can tell me, in your view, what you see the timelines would be, 2, 5, and 10 years maybe?
Are we talking national as in South Africa, or are we talking about the continent as a whole?
I think as a concept, the centralization and then uniformity as a concept across Africa.
Timelines, it's tricky to definitively say that, 2 years, 3 years, because not only do the countries have to come to the table and discuss if this is something that they want like together, and then also internally each country has to understand their own aims. So I can't give you a definitive answer, but I do know that it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
Definitely, because there's going to be pushback. So for example, countries like South Africa, where it's a provincial model, they could have pushbacks saying that no, this is going to take away something from either their sovereignty, their earnings, so I do think it'll take some time.
I think we all share that. I think that uncertainty of not knowing how long this is going to take is obvious. Robin, have you seen the first flickerings of that uniformity happening and discussions between the boards and both on the provincial level and then out into Africa?
Sorry, Cameron, I didn't hear that.
I said, we agree that the timelines might not be in 2 years. We were here. We haven't set out firm timelines yet. But have you seen the first flickerings of those discussions happening about the discussion between the Kenyan board, South African board, the Ugandan board, in between the regions that they have best practices?
I do believe those type of discussions have been happening specifically on the jurisdictions that belong to GROF. There's a number of African countries that have MOUs with each other, where they're obviously sharing ideas. So I think the first part of that type of uniformity has commenced. However, to really get this off the ground there must be some real desire, intent and willingness from everyone to do this type of change, because it probably would be in the best interest of a lot of jurisdictions if we have some type of uniformity, specifically when it comes to licensing, because that's the start of any operator is. So you need to know exactly the background of this operator. And what happens is, if you have this type of uniformity between the different jurisdictions, is you're actually going to strengthen the regulatory oversight of some of the not so stronger regulators, in that is that they will have the opportunity to engage with the more stronger regulators, and you get the opportunity to enforce certain aspects which they might not have been relevant by them before. If you take a person applying for a license in jurisdiction A, where the licensing requirements have not been that stringent, now to apply in jurisdiction A is you might be faced with, let's call it a multi-jurisdictional application form, and it has to meet certain criteria. So automatically the requirements in jurisdiction A has no, I won't say become more onerous, but it has become a bit more stricter, but not stricter that it becomes prohibitive to be operating, stricter, but just to ensure proper control, and that regulators can be assured that whoever is operating in their country has met the levels of suitability.
Right. And maybe what I want to know from you, if you sit on the panel, what signs should operators be looking for in this? What signals should they be looking for? And if you were in their shoes, what they should be prepared for, probably in the next year or so. Maxwell, maybe we start with you.
Come again, the question?
So, talking about the changes, talking about what is on the horizon. If you were an operator, what signals would you be looking out for, and what changes would you be making as an operator?
Okay, being an operator, I think the operators are looking at being assisted to get their licenses a little bit quicker by the regulators. So, because they want to invest in the business. So their aim is maybe if the licensing process can be shortened, I think that will assist them so that they can be able to plan ahead on time.
And Lydia, then I'm going to talk to you and say, does shorter mean less scrutiny?
Not per se to less scrutiny, but as the regulators, because you find that some of the licensing processes, they take long for them to be processed. So I think it is from an operator's perspective, trying to, yes, must scrutinize the applications fairly and do proper due diligence. But at the same time, we must be mindful that these people have to invest. They have an interest to make sure that we are shortening to make the ease of doing entering the business a little bit easier for them, I think.
And Lydia, let me ask you, technology, what role does that play in shortening that gap and making sure that vetting can take place?
So what we've seen on the continent is that there are still some operators that are doing manual checks. Technology is going to help with efficiency, with time, with continuous transaction monitoring, and not just doing it after the fact to see, okay, this person has a problem or was having a problem, but we weren't able to stop it at the time that they were playing the games. So it's a continuous effort, and it helps with efficiency, with time. It may cost money in the beginning, but in the long run, you're helping your business scale way faster, way longer.
Great stuff. And then talking about the operators, Robin, can you tell me one practical thing that operators can do in the next 6 months in order to prepare for changes?
Okay, if we're talking about the changes for online, let's take the jurisdiction South Africa, if you have an operator that is operating in multiple provinces, so they have multiple licenses, one of the things that they could be looking at is obviously look at the criteria of the province which has more onerous requirements in terms of licensing, and try to apply that process to the operators, to the license holders in the other provinces also. So almost trying to create a very centralized internal policy relating to licensing. So at any point in time, if something that should be on the horizon is, they would be prepared for that as such.
Lydia, maybe the same question to you. Maybe you can tell me.
I would say KYC processes and transaction monitoring. My speech is going to be the same through and through, so yes.
And maybe Maxwell, to you, one of the actions that operators can take in the next 6 months?
Operators cannot?
So as we go through this period of change and readiness for legislative change and uniformity, what one action can operators take in the next 6 months?
I think issues of money laundering, they can also be considered by operators because they tend to remain behind, I think, not being properly addressed.
So what I would want to do now is probably take a few questions, rapid fire questions, and get your opinion on some of the points. Things like, is it centralized or hybrid? And I'd like to hear from you. Robin?
I think we should make it a hybrid as opposed to pure centralized.
And would you please explain to me by that hybrid how you see it? Maybe Robin?
Sorry?
On hybrid, how do you see that hybrid system?
The hybrid system is obviously with the national requirement, but with provincial execution. Being on the hybrid as well is you also got to give the option to an applicant to decide whether they want to go for a national or they want to go for a provincial as well.
And then an African license or a more regional license, right? The ability to choose at what depth you want to operate.
That is correct.
And then for you, Lydia, so stricter AML or similar in this environment?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Would you be keen on stricter AML?
Of course.
Or similar?
Stricter AML, of course. Yeah.
Okay. And then more foreign investment or less for you, Maxwell, when it comes to Eswatini?
I think more foreign investment, but with the local participation of people.
And then on the complexity of legislation and getting this whole picture together, do we need more complexity or do we need more clarity? And I think we all agree clarity is the answer to go by, right? Okay. Maybe just on a closing note, maybe any opportunity or disruption that you see coming? Robin?
Sorry. At this point in time, is the way things are going. Let's say within the environment in South Africa is, I think there is a real need to get a uniform approach to everything that we do regarding operators. Obviously, the start has to come from the regulators ourselves. We're talking about a national online license, which will create national standards. But then that's only the start of it. Is that online standards, that national standards must then filter down through to the compliance. Every aspect that we have to do is the requirement should be very similar, if not the same, in each province. Yes, there is maybe certain things which is peculiar to one or other province, but from a starting point of view is everybody must know that there is going to be minimum standards requirement in each province. It would be, the objective is to have one standard throughout the country, but that's just the desire, and I'm not sure whether there is enough willpower basically to get that.
Thank you very much, Robin. And Lydia, from you?
I agree with the standards, uniformity of standards, but one thing I would also like to reiterate is that we need to keep up with the times. So as the industry is booming, there needs to be reform in legislation which matches that growth in the industry. And so I would urge the operators and regulators to come to the table and to either first understand what are the pain points, and secondly to put this in writing.
Maxwell, from you?
Yeah, I think as the closing, it is very, very important to consider that with the issues of technology, with online gambling rising in the continent, it becomes very, very important to realize that issues of protecting players, issues of encouraging responsible gambling, because there is online licensing cut across all jurisdictions. So it is very, very important that we protect players and promote issues of responsible gambling, I think.
Thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much for the question. I'm going to open up to the floor. If there's any questions, if you could raise your hand, and we will have the mic to you. I think this is the one area that every operator has the opportunity to delve into with the talent that we have at that stage. Any questions? Then I'm going to thank the panel. Thank you very much for your contribution. Yeah, and we'll hand it over to the rest of the team. Nosy, thank you very much.